Good afternoon, everyone. Michael Kopinski, the Media and Entertainment Analyst for Noble Capital Markets. With us, we have iHeartMedia and Rich Bressler, who's the President, COO, and CFO. And this is going to be a different type of presentation. This is going to be a fireside chat, Q&A. And so if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand, and otherwise I'll just go ahead and keep asking questions. And so, Rich, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate that.
Thanks for having us, Michael.
Yeah, so let's just go ahead with some basic questions. For some that may not know the company that well, you might want to just kind of give a little bit of a background of the company for those that may not know.
That's great. Well, first of all, good afternoon, and thank you, everybody. So at iHeartMedia, we are the largest audio company in the United States. We're by far the largest broadcast radio company. We have over 850 radio stations in 150 markets. We reach 270 plus million people on a monthly basis, which is the biggest reach company in the United States. We've got multiple platforms. We've got what you think about as traditional radio, broadcast radio, streaming, podcasting. We're also the biggest podcaster in the United States. Actually, I think the biggest podcaster in the world. And we do about 20,000 events a year. We do approximately $4 billion of revenue on an annual basis, all advertising revenue. And I think the latest estimates have us at approximately $700 million of EBITDA. And the only last point I'd mention from an operating stat, which always surprises people from a broadcast radio side, is that listening is higher today than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and yes, it's broadcast radio. And we represent America. We're the biggest in terms of conservative talk, and we go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and Charlemagne the God and Elvis Duran. So as I said, we truly represent the country.
Thank you, Rich. And you touched on your different segments, and I was wondering if you can just talk about your strategy for those businesses and how those different sectors factor into that.
Sure. Well, first of all, our number one strategy is to create value for our stakeholders and all of our stakeholders out there. I'm going to talk. We'll talk about a number of things today, but understand that they're all tactics for the one reason is to create value. The other thing I should mention about our financial model is we are a great free cash flow generator. We are big believers in generation of free cash as the ultimate indication of how the company is doing. From a standpoint of, in terms of what our strategy is to monetize our relationships with our listeners. As I mentioned, we reach 270 million people on a monthly basis, and we use all our platforms to monetize those. We have approximately 1,000 advertising salespeople across the country in our 150 offices. Our strategy is that all of our ad salespeople can sell anything, anytime, anywhere, which is a very purposeful strategy and distinguishes us. So you can sell broadcast radio, you can sell streaming, you can sell podcasting. We have about 40,000 clients. Which range, from the biggest clients, whether they're Procter & Gamble, AT&T, T-Mobile, right down to car dealers and retailers across the country. And I'd say what over the last couple of years, what's been significant and amazing about our business is one is the resiliency of the medium, as I pointed to earlier. As I said, broadcast listening is as high as it's ever been, which goes to that resiliency. And at the same time, we've built out our ad tech stack. So we can do everything now that the big digital players can do, which means that, we can do a media plan for advertisers. We can report on that media plan. We can monitor the media plan and report out just the way the big digital players do. And that's important because the world, if you follow the world of advertising, the world of advertising has moved towards that ability to, like later placement, what they call hands-on keyboard. So you kind of interact directly with the technology, and you can change and move media plans around. And gone are the days when you need to do a media plan, a year in advance, 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance. as I say now, so much of media is done like, in quarter, in month, sometimes in week. And the fact that we at iHeart own all our assets, we own all 850 radio stations, we have all of our talent under contract, we own our ad tech stack, we have that ability to be on air within a 24-hour period, 48-hour period, and create much of the content that people listen to.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the traditional broadcast business. It suffered from the increase in digital advertising. And how do you view the future of radio and what sets iHeart apart from its peers?
Well, it's interesting, to some extent, and I'll give you some tangible examples why we're in a different business than the rest of the radio broadcast industry. And I'll give you just one tangible. Well, the reason for that is the multiple platforms that we have. The reason for that is the reach that we have. The reason for that is you have to have scale. You have to be able to invest in technology. Everything that I'm talking about, where we've built out our audio tech stack over the years, we've been building out, back in, for all of us, many of you and us that have been around a long period of time, 2013, 2014, we started investing in streaming. We started investing in what was like the beginning of that streaming and technology advancement, when people were saying, gee, like, is the internet going to go away? So it's not like we just started investing in this in the last couple of years. We're at the point now where we're bringing programmatic broadcast to the world, which means that you take your broadcast radio, what you think about as traditional radio, and you put it into the advertising buying systems so it can transact again like digital. So between the scale we have out there, what we've invested in technology, and constantly religiously following the consumer, but at the same time building our assets so they transact with the advertising the world the way they demand you transact. That's what really separates us out there. And just to give you some sense, to make that a little bit more tangible, if you took the EBITDA numbers, let's say at least for the publicly reported companies, whether it's a Cumulus or a Town Square or some of the others, or Beasley, and if you take some that are not publicly reported, out Odyssey, and just based on some estimates and added all the EBITDA numbers together of those companies together, and probably multiplied by 2.5, iHeart would still be larger on an annual basis. So, scale does matter. Having the ability to go to an advertiser and say, gee, you want podcasting or you want an event. Well, let's look at a multiple platform approach, because that's what's going to deliver the best results for you. And just coming back to the initial part of your question on broadcast, the most important thing, if you look at any assets, is you have to keep your audience. You have to keep your audience, which is rock solid. If you look at what happened to the magazine industry, if you look at what happened to ad-supported TV, except for live sports, if you look at what happened to newspapers, they lost their audience. And if you lose your audience, you're dead at the end. Again, back to broadcast listening, to your point, the resiliency of the medium, since for, I'll say, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 10 years, is just remarkable how resilient the medium has become. And part of that is because of technology. Part of it is because of our radio host, whether you're Ryan Seacrest, as I said, or Sean Hannity or Elvis Duran, you're constantly in touch with what your listeners want. It's not about a lean back experience. For those of you, in terms of, whether you're in the car, you're in the home, you'll see that Ryan Seacrest maybe plays 2 or 3 songs an hour. What is he doing the rest of the time? He's talking to you. And we represent America, people who cited the fact that the average household income, which many of you I'm sure know, household income in the United States is $70,000 a year. That's our listeners at the end. People think all of us elites, East and West Coast elites, think the world is streaming or something. I think Spotify on a good day reaches 18% of the country, ad-supported. We reach 90%. TikTok on a good day reaches 33 or 34% of the country. Again, we reach 90%. And we tap into everybody across the country, of all genres, children, not children, right, left, and that hasn't changed. And if you look what's happened to other media out there, our 90%, I think the TV broadcast networks, they used to be in the 60s, 70s. I think NBC also is in like the mid 30%. So if you're an advertiser and you want to have impact and you want to have reach and you want to affect consumer behavior and call to action, that's what we do. At the end, and you look at our clients, that's what's representative of that.
Yeah, and Rich, you mentioned about the build out in programmatic. You're still in a build out phase. Where do you think you are in terms of the build out, and how far along are you? Do you believe that there is still opportunity in the programmatic space?
Oh, just tremendous. We're at the beginning, and just for all of us listening here, what we're referring to is, all of our digital assets, our streaming and podcasting are in advertising buying systems, again, like the digital world, like Facebook or Google. What we are now doing is putting our broadcast inventory, which, by the way, whether you're in audio or video, nobody has taken traditional broadcast inventory and ever been able to make it available to the advertising community truly like digital, meaning that you're taking a CPM and make it look like an impression. And we're at the very early days of that. This is just the beginning. And one of the things I shared with our shareholders on the last earnings call was that we are laser focused on looking at our platforms, again, the platforms that are the broadcast and streaming and all of our events, and how do we create new businesses? How do we drive new revenue streams off that platform above, and to be clear, incremental revenue streams that we're not receiving today. And the analogy that we use is our podcasting business, if you went back to 2019, did about $50 million of revenue on an annual basis. For 2025, it'll do about $550 million of revenue on an annual basis. Again, we are by far the biggest podcaster. And to be clear, in podcasting, all the money is in the publishing side. Apple, biggest distributor. You could have, different rep firms that are out there, but we are by far the biggest where the money is on the publishing side. But the reason that analogy is important in terms of podcasting is because, okay, that's a business, I call it, that was created because we had our broadcast airwaves. Because there's something like 4 million podcasts right now in the United States. You could have the greatest podcast in the world, but if you don't drive awareness to it, if you don't drive people to it, what good is it out there? And big advertisers have just started to come to podcasting. That's why the future is so bright, because historically podcasting would be a DR, direct response industry, and we have brought big advertisers now. And then if you take that to the next logical step, when we talk about things like the programmatic business, and again, we didn't make any predictions what's happening programmatic, but we said, okay, here's a new business, incremental, that we're creating out of one of our platforms. So we used podcasting just as an example to show what the possibilities are. We did a deal which some of you may have read about a week or two ago that was announced with TikTok, where we created a partnership. We created a business, operating relationship with TikTok. What's interesting about that announcement is, yes, we agreed to create new podcasts with the TikTok creators. We agreed that a lot of the TikTok influencers will be at our major events as influencers as posting to add to our influencers out there, by the way, starting with Jingle Balls that may of you be familiar with throughout the country. Last night was the first one in Dallas, which went very well. But what people were surprised about was one of the focuses for TikTok wanting to work with us and become partners is their influencers want to be on broadcast radio because they want the scale of our audience. They want the engagement of our audience out there. So I think it's just another statement, another data point that reinforces the strength of the medium, the engagement of the medium, being broadcast radio, and the effectiveness of the medium.
Yeah, and we had a number of media companies here today, and they still say that there's a lot of uncertainty, both from the consumer side and the advertiser side. What are you saying?
Well, what I'm saying, what I've said, and and if kind of throughout the year, I would say we're seeing a little bit of, and we have now for a couple of quarters, and I think you've seen it in our results, which I think we've had a nice year overall in terms of our results, is I call it, we have like a little bit of a breeze behind our back. I'm not quite sure it's a wind behind our back, but it is a lot better than having a breeze or wind in your face operating. We've all seen the same data. I know the consumer confidence numbers were not great. A few weeks ago, I actually happened to have dinner last night with the CEO of one of the major banks in the U.S. and one of the big money center banks, and he was talking, reinforcing the data we all saw coming out of the Thanksgiving weekend and Black Friday about consumer spending being up a couple percent coming out of that weekend, and actually being up a couple percent across the board. Higher income was up more, and on average it was up a couple percent. But even at the lower income, that was still up slightly. So, we're seeing the consumer out there spending a little bit. One of the interesting things we've seen is from the advertising community. Again, we have 40,000 advertisers. Is that people or companies, excuse me, are navigating through this. They may not be, we'd all like to have more stability. We'd all like to know what the Fed is going to do. We'd all, I think, there's a sense about boxing in terms of the range of tariffs that are kind of acceptable. And obviously, there's the existential risk we all know about in terms of what may come out from a government standpoint, a policy standpoint. But the other side to that is what this year, which is really brought to light, is that advertisers have really seen that they can't just shut down or cut back really too much, because if they lose that connection with the consumer, if they lose that communication, if they lose the consumer understanding the value of their brand, it costs them 2, 3, 4 times as much money to bring it back when they start again. And if you go back, this is a number of years ago during the pandemic, when there were, a lot of cutbacks and much more dramatic cutbacks during that period of time, I think there was a lesson learned then. And even as we went through different challenging economic periods of time a number of years ago, I think there was a lesson learned that period of time. And so this year has been so interesting to me, because even the beginning of the year, when there were threats of tariffs of 40 or 60 or 80%, there were pauses, but there wasn't really a shutdown on it. And then as the year has gone on, you've kind of seen the confidence build and people navigate through it. And, for us as a company, to state the obvious, this is a non-election cycle year. And election cycles are obviously important if you're in the advertising community. For the first 9 months of this year, we at iHeart are up on an EBITDA basis on reported 9 months, which I think if you went back a year, everybody probably would have bet against us being up in EBITDA for the first 9 months. And I think that goes again to the diversity of the asset base we have on the company. And we are also incredibly, incredibly rigorous on a cost standpoint, efficiency. We recently announced an additional $50 million cost program that will go, it's already identified and executed, that you'll see in the numbers starting January 1st, 2026. But that's on top of a $200 million net, $150 million program that we announced at the end of last year, which went in and has all been delivered on for 2025. So I think the combination of, again, the resiliency of the medium, the efficiency of the medium from a revenue standpoint, and costs are a way of life for us in this company. If you go back 3 or 4 years, I think we had about 5 years, we had about 13,500 people at iHeart. Today, we're at about 8,500, 83, depending full-time, part-time. We haven't missed a beat, I think, in our estimation, everybody's estimation, in revenue and driving financial results. And I don't know what we're going to be a year or two from now, but we will definitely be less. And I think that's our job as management. The shareholders give us the ability to invest in technology, and our job is to make ourselves more efficient.
Going back to the advertising trends, are you seeing differences between national and local?
Um, I wouldn't say differences. I think, both relatively stable. Interesting, if you look at some of the national trends sometime as a little bit of, at least has been for us, as a little bit more of a historical indicator for the future. And we mentioned this on the last earnings call. If you look at our top, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 advertisers, and if you look at our top, relationships with the biggest advertising holding companies, we're actually up nicely in,
Thank you.
we're actually up nicely we were up nicely in Q2 and Q3 on broadcast revenue and on revenue in total. So again, I think back to your earlier question about the health and what we're seeing out there. And obviously we're constantly challenging ourselves on it. But that's why I said I think we've got like a nice little breeze behind our back.
Gotcha. And hopefully the Fed rate decrease is going to help you there as well.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood. Your digital audio group has been a growth driver for you. And can you talk a little bit about the growth drivers there?
Sure. Give a perspective, the digital audio group of our approximately $4 billion of revenue does about $1.2 billion of revenue. And the biggest growth drivers there, that is where our podcasting business is recorded. And if you look at what we've been up for the first 9 months and most estimates, we're going to be up about 22% in revenue this year. That's the $550 million I mentioned earlier. And we may not have enough time to fully talk about it today, but that shows no sign of letting up, and happy to follow up with people separately. And also within that number is our streaming business, which has been strong. Our digital extension businesses, which we package digital extensions with the rest of our assets, and all of our websites. So, as I said, if you go back, whatever, 3, 4, 5 years, there wasn't a business there. 6 years now, that's about $1.2 billion. What's interesting about that is we really view digital, and again, we have a number of charts on our investment deck that go to the details on this, as additional to, not instead of, our other businesses.
You have new shows, new creators coming online there?
We always have new creators, and also we're the exclusive podcaster for the NFL, and we've got Malcolm Gladwell and Jay Shetty and Shonda Rhimes. And interesting, about 60% of our podcasting business now, revenue, is actually originated locally, which people are surprised by, where if you go back a couple of years, that was about 10% of our business. So again, that should give all of us a lot of confidence about the future growth there.
And how are you hearing about from your advertisers in Q4 about their willingness to spend?
Well, no, I don't want to say anything that's different, and I wouldn't say anything different than the guidance we gave out a few weeks ago. But the one observation I would make is that, normally when you get to about December 1st, at least in the advertising world, you hear a lot of, okay, Rich, well, like we're basically focused all on 2026. It's like, where are you going to go for Christmas? Or where are you going to go for your holiday? Or what's next? I would tell you that, and I think you see evidence of this coming out of the weekend, there's just conversations now. People are still talking a lot about how they can affect their sales between now and January 1st. And again, not changing anything I've said about the company or the numbers out there, but it's notably different conversation this year than in prior years.
With more than 6,000 small and micro-cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next Apple, then ChannelCheck truly is your tree. It's an investor community where you can access independent Wall Street research, advanced market data, balanced news, corporate videos, and podcasts. You can even register to attend in-person Meet the Management Series luncheons, and to be part of the preeminent annual Small and Microcap Investor Conference, NobleCon. And here's the best news. Since ChannelCheck is sponsored by the featured companies, premium membership requires no investment. It's absolutely free. So check it out. Log in today. Find out why ChannelCheck is North America's leading source of research on the companies that just may change the world.